moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I've called One Piece the king of manga, and it's debatable. Obviously, everything is subjective. I do love Berserk. I know some of the people on the channel do. I also like Demon Slayer a lot. One Piece has one thing going for it, and that's longevity. It's been going for a long time, and it's in the top 20 of the highest grossing franchises globally. And because of some of the things that are coming out, because it's some of the deals I know that have been recently announced, some of the additional distribution it's got, it feels extremely likely that it's going to surpass Spider-Man and Batman at this point in terms of media grossing properties. And again, if you love it, who cares whether it made a lot of money or it made very little money? But it's a juggernaut. Is One Piece. I think that the thing about it that it winds up being very powerful and hard to replicate is that it's geared toward everyone. If you're a kid, you can watch it. There's little, fan service little elements to it. Nami eating the titty fruit at some point during the journey and expanding dramatically. That is a joke. Well, not the expansion. That definitely has happened. But anyway, it's not a very good joke. Anyway. One Piece appeals to a wide audience. It also has this interesting simultaneous feeling of being an ongoing series, something that doesn't have an end, but also not just there's a purpose to it. There's a direction to it. Unlike Spider-Man and Batman, where, these properties are just meant to be evergreen, to go on forever. One Piece definitely feels like there's a destination. It feels like there's the conclusion that the series is going to go to. But it's because it's been going for so many years now. It just passed chapter 1000, both in the manga a few months ago and in the anime just now. There's so much. If you get into One Piece, you're taking on a multi-year commitment of movies and shows and all this kind of stuff. So it gives you the feeling of there's so much to consume. It feels like Batman and Spider-Man, yet when you read it, it's certainly based on an ongoing story of cliffhangers and character growth that benefits it. It's hard that's a very tough thing to try and replicate. And so, more power to the creators for doing that. So what I want to do is just take you through a little bit of kind of the series. If you're trying to get into One Piece, it's daunting. I've talked about this before. The art style is a little rough, particularly at the beginning. I know so that turns some people off. A lot of it's in black and white. It also turns people off. And, the idea of I'm going to get into a comic about pirates, that's what a lot of people think. But it's not about pirates, it's about superheroes in many cases. They're not superheroes like we think of them, but there's fantastical powers and there's shadowy governments and there's certainly plenty of political elements in this book. It touches on social topics. It touches on, world government and manipulation. There's definitely a point of view to this entire thing. But it also feels light and like, you're in for an adventure with people who have powers. So just kind of walking through the arcs here, because that's the purpose of this video. So we kick off with what they call the East Blue Saga, and it's got 100 chapters to it, or there's 60 and change episodes on the anime. And basically, the East Blue Saga is comprised of arcs. First arc being the Romance Dawn arc. And this is where we are introduced to Luffy and his quest to become the Pirate King. We also meet a number of kind of early characters, including Kobe, who's a bit character, but that's one of the things with this entire series is that there's a massive supporting cast, and they do tend to come back later in the series. This sets up the dynamic of Luffy, who wants to be a pirate, which is definitely in contrast to the Marines, who's meant to be the police force. And so we get to see, why he is in contrast, the fact that Luffy is a criminal in the eyes of the Marines, but also has a good heart to it. They reach this town, Shelltown, and that's where Luffy meets the first member of his crew, an ally, Roanoa Zoro, who is a classic Shogun-style swordsman who also has a quest. He is a pirate hunter, but he also wants to be the best swordsman in the world. And so despite the fact that he's a pirate hunter, as for his profession, he joins up with Luffy because he recognizes the spirit and the heart, and he views him as something, a character that he could be going to. This leads into the Orangetown arc, and this is where Luffy meets the first kind of bigger villain that's going to come up later, Buggy, who is he has the chop powers, which means parts of his body can kind of be chopped off. But they also meet Nami. Nami has a backstory and a secret, but she joins up with the crew anyway as their navigator. But she's clearly out for gold. She's money hungry. That's what she's after. And there's something going on with her that we're going to find out later. That leads us to the Syrup Village arc, which is where we meet the third member of the crew, which is Usopp. Usopp is a chronic liar who's basically tells tales about his amazing past and everything that he's done, all of which are fantasies. They go up against the Black Cat Pirates, different pirate group, similar to Buggy's, but a little bit more deadly in terms of how they're put out. And they get their first ship, the Going Merry. And this is where we see more of Luffy and crew who are pirates, but they're doing things to help and save the town. Their fight against the Black Cat Pirates is very much in the defense and help of the city that or the island that they're at. And so even though they're pilots, they're loved by the population. This takes us to the Barati, which is a sea restaurant. That is known as one of the world famous kind of restaurants. And once again, we get into conflict both with the Marines and also Don Krieg, who's returned from the Grand Line. We get the first indication of a pirate who's come back. And we get a pirate battle, and we get a Marine battle, and we get a lot of different elements going on. And we meet for the first time Sanji. Sanji is going to become the ship's chef and resident pervert, who is more than happy to do things for the women, but is a kind of an arrogant prick to everyone else. In particular, Zoro, which sets off one of the most amazing parts of the series, where the two of them have a ongoing conflict with each other. Zoro goes up against one of the warlords of the sea, and this is where the series is very clever, and it slowly introduces this bigger world. That is Mihawk, who is a better swordsman than Zoro, which allows us to delve a little bit more into Zoro's past of kind of who he is and what he can do, and kind of his mission for being the world's greatest pirate. This takes us now this is a lot of episodes and chapters at this point, if you've gotten here, and this is where a lot of people bail out, is before they get here. It feels like it's kind of moving slow. It's very light in a sense. They're having big battles, but it's certainly more friendly. Finally, we get to Arlong Park. And Arlong Park is where we learn that Nami, who seemingly betrayed the team, is actually in indentured servitude to the Fishman pirates, and Arlong, who basically has moved into her island and murdered a number of people there, including Nami's, for lack of a better word, her mother, her guardian. And we get a pretty intense. We see it turn up a bit. Luffy has been pretty happy-go-lucky through this entire thing. In this episode, when he sees that a friend of his, Nami, is hurt by Arlong, it snaps into seriousness, where Luffy basically goes in and beats the living crap out of Arlong, and they have this pretty major fight. It's a pretty big deal. In doing so, we learn that the Fishman pirates were working with the government, which is absolutely corrupt, to funnel money to them. So we get into a little bit of politics here, but this is where Luffy is branded with a wanted poster, and the government sets their sights against him. Not because he did anything wrong. In fact, he's liberated several islands, but because, in fact, he is, he stopped some of their illegal money trafficking coming from the Fishman pirates. Finally, this wraps up with the Logtown arc, which is where the crew is heading, but they have to pass through this town in order to get to the Grand Line, which is ultimately the location where Luffy is seeking his fortune, the One Piece. This is where we definitely put them into conflict with the Marines. We get this is where Gold Roger, the kind of this infamous character in the series, was executed, and we get the introduction of Smoker and several other members of the Marines who are basically now more serious about Luffy. His bounty, I believe, goes up at this point. We learn about different types of powers and how they happen. Zoro gets a new sword, and Luffy's mysterious father, Monkey D. Dragon, is introduced kind of in the background. But this concludes the East Blue arc, and concludes the in many cases the prologue is, and it's kind of crazy to think that 100 chapters equals a prologue, but that's kind of how this has been viewed over time, because the crew sets off officially for the Grand Line. We have a not the complete crew, but we have the good solid foundation of Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Nami, and Usopp. How can I forget Usopp in this crew? This takes us to the Alabasta saga, which is pretty much one of the bigger conflicts. They get through the Reverse Mountain arc, which is where they actually get through, and they introduce a giant whale, Laboon, who comes up later and has a really kind of touching connection to Brook, who we'll meet later. But we also get to the Whiskey Peak arc, which is where we learn about Mr. Nine, Miss Wednesday, and a number of different assassins, basically with powers. So we're getting, it's for lack of better words, a formation of a villain team. They meet Vivi, and they get briefly as a new member of the crew. We also get hints of Robin, who's going to join the crew later, but for now is working with the villains, in particular their leader Crocodile, who's one of the warlords of the sea. Now, keep in mind, to this point, the warlords of the sea have been described as giant, epic kind of characters that are huge threats that you have to get through. This takes us to the Little Garden arc. The Little Garden arc is somewhat of a diversion, but we get to meet this giant, this island filled with giants that would then be called back later in the Water 7 arc, or actually after that, the Innie's Lobby arc. But anyway, they also meet more of the Baroque's Works, which is this villainous team under the command of Crocodile, who are working on behalf of the warlord to basically destabilize this island's economy. The government has a blind eye to this. This takes us to the Drum Island arc, which is where we get the introduction to the crew's doctor, Tony Chopper. And we get another battle against this kind of mechanical fruit empowered character, Wapol. And then finally, it gets us to the Alabasta arc. And that arc is this massive battle between not only the villainous team of Baroque Works, but also the Warlord of the Sea, Crocodile. This is a huge one. People are getting impaled. There's violence all over the place. The Marines show up. We get Smoker. Robin joins. Vivi, who's the princess of Alabasta, stays. And you get this. You get a lot of things. We also get to meet Luffy's brother, Porcus the Ace, who is going to be a character that has, of course, a huge impact on the series and certainly with Luffy. But this arc is pretty massive in terms of opening up the world quite a bit. We get a bunch of new players on the board. We see more of kind of the political machinations between the government and kind of how they treat the people, and we get a lot of kind of social and political commentary in here about things. And it's a huge arc with a kind of a massive payoff in terms of everything that goes on. That takes us to the Sky Island Saga. Sky Island Saga is shorter, and this is where they basically are going to try and figure out how to get to the Sky Island, which is supposedly going to have some different things for them to explore. They learn more about the mythology of other pirates who have come along. We also introduce a bunch of characters very subtly in the background, including Marshall D. Teach, Blackbeard, who's going to become a massive player in the series as it goes forward. This is about world building. It's kind of disguised as world building, and it takes us to the Skypiea arc. This is where they go literally up into an island in the sky with their ship. They liberate the place called Upper Yard and the Skypiea Kingdom from the cruel god Enel. And he's probably one of the bigger threats the characters face, but also has a cool moment where he learns that his powers are largely useless against Luffy, so it sets up a really interesting battle between the two. Once again, we get some nice villains with some powers that the characters can go up against. At this point, they've assembled a lot of the various pieces to the team. Again, the crew has grown somewhat, and it takes us to the Water 7 saga. Now, the Water 7 saga is pretty much at this point you're hooked on the series. But if for whatever reason you're not, you're still and you're several hundred chapters into it. This is where it all clicks into gear, because a lot of the payoff of character building and how people interact with each other and their motivations, they do an excellent job of actually bringing those to the table and paying them off in a pretty huge way. So the characters get back from Skypiea. They immediately get into a fight with a kind of rival pirate that's meant to be kind of a cool down, comedy bit. We get some battles with the Marines as well, and we start getting we get the concept of the admirals. The admirals are members of the Marines with truly epic powers who are able to command just fear and consequences for everyone they come across. The crew, whose ship is badly damaged at this point, the Going Merry, which provides a nice emotional moment for the crew, and they finally give the Going Merry, somewhat of a Viking funeral. They get to a place called Water 7. Water 7 has a number. You get a bunch of things here where you learn about. You get a falling out with Usopp and Luffy. They've been building for some time. We learn about the history and backstory of Robin. And we get this team of CP9, which is, for lack of a better word, kind of a Marine government spy assassination group that is basically after Robin and trying to imprison her and very dirty in the tricks they use to do so. With Robin captured, Luffy basically decides to invade Enies Lobby. Now, this is the first time that Luffy is going to truly attack the Marines and the government head on, which is going to make him infamous and certainly is a diversion from his goal of being king of the pirates, but he's determined to save his friends at any cost. So we get some amazing character development from Robin and some nice building there. We do get the retirement and sinking of the Going Merry, their ship. We get just Luffy powering up with some additional points to it. We get Sanji and Zoro. I mean, basically, everybody uses this as an opportunity to get stronger. And they also get the joining of a shipwright, Frankie, who joins the team. And we get at the conclusion of this arc, a massive battle between Blackbird and Ace, which ultimately leads in Ace being kidnapped or captured and handed over to the government. This is a major turning point because it's going to set up the entire next couple arcs. So the series does a bit of a diversion at this point into something called the Thriller Bark Saga. And this is where it's for lack of a better word, a horror-like saga. It does introduce a new warlord, Moira, and it you get some good you get some good kind of comedy meets lightweight horror in this that is a little bit of a different take of what we've seen, and it serves as an introduction to the ship's musician, Brooke, who is, for all intents and purposes, the last member of the crew until for a while. We get one more down the road, but this is going to bring Brooke into the picture. Finally, and this is where I'm going to close, because this is the last arc before the big time skip. So what I would kind of cheaply call the first half of the series, but the reality is the second half is probably going to go a lot longer than the first half. We get what's called the Summit War Saga. I've talked about this before. This is probably the most amazing set of chapters I've ever seen in a comic book. People have asked me before, what's my favorite comic? The Summit War Saga in One Piece absolutely is it. You get the Sabaody Archipelago arc. This is where Luffy and crew go to basically to cross over at the Red Line into truly the New World. And this is where Luffy, despite all their powers and the crew kind of leveling up, they realize they're hopelessly out of depth in both their fights against the world government and the leaders there, as well as the admirals who just take them down just with very little problem whatsoever. This sets up a really sense of threat because they are hopelessly outmatched. They get scattered to various parts of the world. And actually we get then hundreds of chapters here where we won't see the crew back together again. They're all scattered, kind of doing their own adventures. Luffy gets sent to the island of Amazon Lily. There he meets Boa Hancock, who initially fights him, but then falls hopelessly in love with him, and she's going to be an ally for the future. Luffy then learns about Ace's execution and knows that he'll have to wait on getting his crew reassembled because he has to go save his brother. To do so, he's got to travel to the most fearsome location of the Marines, Impelled Down, which is this underwater prison where he has to save his brother. So he's got to break into that prison, go to an impossible location, rescue him, and bring him back out. This prison arc is incredible, both in everything it builds up, but it also does a pretty awesome job of bringing back some of the Baroque works characters that we had way back in Alabasta, and that's just some pretty incredible stuff of these characters and kind of how they interact with each other. We bring Buggy back into the picture, which we haven't seen in quite a long time. Mr. 2 is there. It's an incredible reuniting of some characters we haven't seen in a long time as they storm the prison. We also meet Ivankov and Jimbei. Now, Jimbei will later join the crew as the final member. And he is a fishman who's was one of the warlords of the sea, had been imprisoned. Ivankov is... it's hard to explain exactly what Ivankov is, but Ivankov is probably when people talk about the lack of LGBTQ representation in manga and the fact that it doesn't deal with this kind of stuff, Ivanka has a power that can literally change men into women, and that provides both some comic relief and some interesting dynamics to everything that's going on there. So, despite rescuing Jimbei and kind of storming the prison, they're just slightly too late. His brother Ace has been taken to Marineford, where he will be formally executed in front of the world. Luffy can't let that happen, and so he storms the center of the world government and the Marines. There is a massive battle. Whitebeard, who we've been seeing through this period, who Ace worked with and was part of his crew, joins this fight. It is absolutely a batshit insane 30-chapter battle of all different sides coming together, and just the admirals against Whitebeard. Just incredible moments and such amazing payoff to everything that we've seen. Ace unfortunately does die, as Luffy's not able to save him quickly enough. Meanwhile, Blackbeard, who shows up, is able to steal Whitebeard's powers and basically sets him up as a massive threat going forward. This leads to basically Luffy being critically injured, goes into a catatonic state as a result of his brother. We get the introduction of a number of other people kind of throughout all this. The 11 supernovas, who are other pirates that are chasing this entire the One Piece. And at the end of this arc, we see a little bit of what's happening to the different pirates on Luffy's crew, where they've wound up, how they're evolving their skills, how they're changing, and all of it is, in many ways, big callbacks to things that have happened earlier in the series, paying off kind of the evolution of who they are and where they're going. And this is where they call officially the Timeskip, where the series is going to skip 2 years before the characters reunite again with their training done and their power, and continue on their quest to the One Piece. I'll do another video of this next half of the series, but I wanted to kind of walk through all that. Obviously, I'm saying it too late now. Lots of spoilers in there, but that's in short a little bit of what happens. It's an amazing series. If you haven't picked it up, it's definitely worth it. And it's one of those cases where if you have been begging for comics to give you more depth and more complexity and get into a lot of character development, everything else, this is the series for you. It's absolutely incredible, and I recommend it highly. But anyway, there you go. Little bit of One Piece for you there. And we'll come back and we'll do the next part, the Fishman saga, the Dressrosa, and the Four Emperors saga, and the other parts, and bring you up to today at some point. But great series. Oda is a clear master, and thanks everybody for hanging out with us. Do you like One Piece? Let me know in the comments below your favorite moments, everything else, and thanks for listening.